Welcome back, and let's bring in now Liberal Senator Dave Sharma. Dave, you've been scrutineering all day in Bradfield. Can you give us an update on how this seat is looking?
Well, the contest is still very tight, Sharri, but Giselle Capterian, the Liberal candidate's 215 votes ahead. She seems to be winning the postal votes about sort of 58% to 42%. There's still some more postal votes to be counted. So, look, it's too early, certainly, to declare a result one way or the other. But I think Giselle's been making up ground as the count has progressed, and I'm certainly very hopeful that she will get over the line and be the next Member of Parliament for Bradfield.
We've, of course, seen the good news with Tim Wilson beating Zoe Daniel in Goldstein. Do you think it's looking like Amelia Hamer might do the same thing as well in Kooyong?
Look, that's certainly my hope. Having had a look at the numbers, I haven't been involved in that count, but having a look at the numbers, the way the postal votes are breaking, how many more postal votes are still to count, she's certainly narrowed the gap significantly since the weekend, which is what we always expected would happen, I hasten to point out. And look, she's not ahead on the count, but she's getting quite close. And hopefully, from my perspective, there'll be enough more votes that come in, postals and others, to get her over the line.
It's amazing because on election night, the Liberals were ridiculed for saying, oh, we've got to wait for, the pre-poll and the postal. But now it looks like a lot of those Teal seats that, were declared victory for the Teals are now at least in doubt.
Look, very true. So obviously, Goldstein has been won by the Liberals. That's clear now. Kooyong is very close. It looks like Bradfield has been held by the Liberals. So I think, amongst a very poor night and a lot of tragic results for many of my, colleagues and Liberal candidates, these were a couple of bright spots for us.
I've got to ask you about who you think would be the best leader for the Liberal Party. This is something you will have a vote in. Are you putting your support behind one of the candidates?
Look, at the moment, I'm open to all candidates. I'm not going to declare my support, unfortunately not to you tonight, Sharri, behind any particular one. But whoever it is, and, I have a high respect for all the candidates who put their names forward. Whoever it is, I think, really needs to be prepared to grapple with the immensity and the scale of the challenges we face to rebuild. That's important for us, of course, but I think it's important for Australia that we have a strong, credible opposition and an alternative government that can form a party of government. That's in the interests of every Australian. It's in the interests of better governance for Australia.
I mentioned a bit earlier in the show how you did defeat an independent in Kerryn Phelps in Wentworth, and then you lost to independent Allegra Spender. Do you think this is going to continue to be a battle in some of these traditionally blue ribbon seats, or do you think there is a pathway that they can return to the Liberal Party, and if so, what is it?
Well, I think, Tim Wilson's result, Giselle Capterian's result is not known yet, and Amelia Hamer's close contest, I think shows that there is a pathway back. The Teals of Climate 200, ran a number of very well-funded candidates in other seats as well, like Wannon Dantian's seat, but, also in McPherson on the Gold Coast, a number of places around the country. None of them had success. And look, we need to do a lot more to win back voters in those areas, but it shows you that that can be done. And I would say that, the Teals now having been in Parliament for 3 years, they've been held to account for their promises and their conduct and their votes and their ability to deliver. And I think that's what Tim Wilson highlighted quite effectively in his own campaign, is that, the promise of the Teals has not materialised. And as a result, I think he convinced a number of people to come back to a major party and to come back to the Liberals.
Tim Wilson also said when he gave his press conference today that he still believes nuclear energy needs to be part of Australia's future. This is despite the scare campaign that Labor ran, which would have damaged the coalition. What's your view on this?
Well, I think all the policies we took to the election will rightly be reviewed and reassessed. So, I think everything is up for discussion and debate. Personally, I have no problem with nuclear energy. I think it's a good idea. But the most potent element of the scare campaign was not the technology, it was the cost and the fact that the government would be building, owning and operating these assets, which, even on our own costings were like in the hundreds of billions of dollars. As someone who prefers that private enterprise and private operators own and operate these assets in a regulated environment if need be, that's always been a difficult thing, I think, for Liberals to accept. And I certainly think that element should be reviewed.